Health, Psychology, and Human Nature with André Sturesson. Hey friends, hope you're having a great day. Are you following me on Instagram and Facebook? Please go to Health, Psychology, and Human Nature on Instagram or Facebook, or both for that matter, to get the latest episodes, inspiration, and more. Please take a pause and go there. Also, if you like the episode, please share it with a friend, family member, or somebody else who you think might like it. Welcome back, friends, to Health, Psychology, and Human Nature with me, André Sturesson, a science-focused podcast where we explore, learn, and improve our lives together. How does our beliefs affect us and our lives? It doesn't matter if we believe that we can or can't learn and grow. In today's episode, me and Kali talk about the growth mindset, what it is, how it affects us, tips on where to learn more about it, and also suggestions of how to internalize it. Kali, she has a Ph.D. in psychology from UC Davis. She's a social-developmental psychologist with an interest in understanding how to raise children to grow up to be healthy, productive members of society. She studies how self-perception, such as growth mindset and self-esteem, fosters thriving lives throughout the lifespan. Friends, I really hope you enjoy today's episode. Kali, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm very glad to have you on and talk about mindsets. I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I am excited to talk to you about them.
Sounds great. I think perhaps we should just start off, for people who have never heard about mindsets before, like, what is a mindset?
Sure. So a growth mindset is a perception of yourself and kind of how you work in the world and the world works around you. And it's most often focused on the domain of intelligence or how smart you are, but really, since it's a perception of yourself, it's your perception of how smart you are. And there's a tendency for people to either have more of a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So when you have a fixed mindset, it's this idea that you have a certain ability like intelligence and you're born with that and it can't change. So the extreme of it is people are born smarterdom. And it sounds like many people would never say, oh, that's exactly how the world works. But we do see it when you start to look at other ways people talk, like, oh, I'm not a math person. Oh, rocket scientists, they are brilliant. There's only a certain number of people who could become a rocket scientist. That's a fixed mindset. That's saying there's something innate about those people that can't be learned. And a growth mindset is this understanding that the way people get smart is through hard work and effort and practice and really going after learning goals. Like, I want to learn and get better at something. And all those efforts help people become better. People aren't magically, they're not just born with this gift of being able to be the best golfer in the world or to be able to be a rocket scientist. They work really hard. And when we dig down and see what people are doing, it's the hard work that's getting them there. And so once you come to understand that, then it's thought of as more having this growth mindset.
Interesting. So would you say like a growth mindset, like in its essence, is about a belief that you can improve and like grow within different abilities and as a person?
Yes. Yes, I guess that's a more succinct way of saying what I said.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if I understood it correctly. Yeah. So the essence is basically that if you have a growth mindset, then it's most like the essence is kind of that I can grow, I can learn, I can develop these different skills, And if you have a fixed mindset, it's more about, I have this set of skills, I have this set of intelligence or whatever, and I can't really improve it even though I try, kind of.
Right. And it impacts the way you approach things in your life when you have these different types of mindsets. And one of the things that's important is it's not that there are growth mindset people out there and there are fixed mindset people out there, and that's just it, right? You're just like that. You're that way all the time, anytime. We all have both in our heads. We both have times in which a fixed mindset might come into play and times that a growth mindset might come into play. So there's probably areas that you have spent a lot of time on, you don't really think about it, of how much time you've invested to learn something because it's just a hobby or something you enjoy. And so you approach that with a growth mindset all the time because you're like, you've seen yourself changing. Whereas I could put you into a new situation and you'd say, no, I can't do that. There's no way. That's not something I'm good at. So it's important to remember that we have both, and it's learning to recognize when your fixed mindset is rearing its head versus your growth mindset.
I think that is very, very interesting. Perhaps we could take. Do you know, or could you take perhaps like an example where like when a person has a growth mindset and where a person has a fixed mindset?
Sure, and it can be. Right, just think for a moment. So it doesn't have to be different areas. So in my job, I've been doing my job for a long time now, and I end up in a lot of meetings and talking about growth mindset and other things all day long, and I don't really think anything of it. And if someone asked if I could learn something new about growth mindset or how to do a research study, I'd be like, sure, I don't know how to do that. I can do it. So it might be that somebody said, oh, here's a new project. Could you do this? And I'm like, sure, of course. I have no idea what it is, but I can figure it out because
right.
That's what I do, right?
Yeah.
But podcasts aren't something that I do. And in truth, I don't really listen to podcasts either.
Right.
Not for anything against podcasts, but usually when I'm listening to something, it's really mindless.
Right.
And I'm trying to get a break. So leading up to this podcast, starting from when you asked, I got all this anxiety.
Yeah.
And I thought about maybe I shouldn't do it. I don't know. It's going to be it. I don't know if I can do it. It's just so not my natural state. And I had to try to think about I talk to people about this all the time. Why is a podcast different?
Yeah.
And it was like, well, I have a small audience. Now there's going to be tons of people. What if I say something that isn't quite right? Or what if you ask me about a study and I don't know the study? Then I'm showing the whole world that I am not a growth mindset expert if I don't know one of these studies, right? So it's still my area, but my fixed mindset's coming out and it's telling me things like, don't do the podcast because you might fail.
Right.
And you don't want to fail. A fixed mindset is a way you protect yourself. It wants you to stay protected, not try hard things, because if you fail, it reinforces the idea that you can't do it. Right. So if I start with an idea that I can't do it and I go and I try something and don't do well at it, then the fallback from that, the lesson I'm telling myself is, oh, see, you can't do it. Don't do that again.
Right.
Don't risk yourself.
Right.
Don't risk yourself or somebody else finding out that you are not good at this.
I think that was really good examples. I think, yeah, it really makes it clear. Yeah, exactly. And the last part you mentioned there was also very interesting. That if I have an expectation that I won't do good, and then I try and it doesn't work, then that even reinforces the belief that I won't be able to do it again.
Right. So this is part of the next step in explaining what a growth mindset is that the growth mindset is this idea of whether your abilities are malleable or fixed. What is important to understand about that is exactly what you're saying, what that leads to as you go along in life, right? So if we think about a student situation, so a student with a fixed mindset, if they say, I can't do math, someone hands them a new math assignment, and they're like, I can't do this. So they already have decided that they can never get better at math.
Yeah.
Now they're being given a math assignment and they have all this anxiety, right? Because when someone gives you something hard, it creates some stress and anxiety. That is then occupying part of their working memory, making it hard for them to really learn and concentrate on what they're doing. And so they'll likely not do as well. They will often shy away from it, preferring things they already know how to do. But if they are forced to do something they don't, and then don't do well, then it's just this reminder. See, I'm not good at math. And then the next time they have an option to try to do something harder, then they're even more likely to shy away. Like they're not, why study hard for a test that I know I can't do?
Exactly.
So then, of course, it's this downward spiral because you're not going to get better if you're not actually working on it. And so it keeps you trapped. Whereas in a growth mindset, if what your mindset is that I can learn, it's going to be hard, but the way I learn is through doing hard things. And so if someone gives me a challenge, I better work hard at it. And, if I don't do well, then it means I need to work harder. Maybe I didn't use the right strategies and I need to ask my teacher for help in how to do it better. Or maybe I just didn't put enough time into it. Or maybe I didn't understand the last thing well enough and I should go get help to understand that better so I can explain it here. And through that process of effort, persistence, using good strategies, then I do get better. And even if it's not as well as I wanted to do, I know that I can keep working hard to get better at it.
Exactly. And then that perhaps then reinforces the belief that you can do something. So like if you do something, or like if you believe you can do something, then you will probably excel, or you'll probably do better. And then if you do better, and then you probably reinforce the belief that you're actually capable of doing it next time, kind of.
Right, exactly. And so it gives you this, it's sort of like a security blanket, right? That it's like, oh, with a fixed mindset, you're so worried about somebody figuring out that you are not capable that you just stay with easy things so that you don't fail.
Right.
But with the growth mindset, you're like, no, I'm secure. It's not about whether I fail or not. It's about me trying hard and learning from my mistakes.
Exactly.
And trying hard again. And the importance is I learn. The only way I fail is either I didn't learn something, or I didn't learn something from my process, or I didn't learn something from the failure.
Exactly. And I think perhaps the end goal also seems to be important, I think, when it comes to growth mindset. So it seems to be like the development, the learning, the growing seems to be the important thing. And I mean, then if you try something and you're not like doing it 100%, or you're not doing it perfectly, but you're still doing it and you have still learned. So then I guess, according to a growth mindset, then you're still succeeding because you're learning and you're growing as a person and you're growing your abilities.
Right, exactly. So often when we teach this to kids, we talk about the brain being a muscle, right? It's like a muscle. When you go to the gym and you work out your muscles, they get bigger. But if you did the same weight over and over again, it wouldn't get bigger. You would plateau somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so with your brain, it's the same way, that the process to learning is working your brain out. And the way you work it out, right? So the way you work it out is through challenging yourself. So our brain is filled with all these connections that help us understand things and think through problems faster. And the more we do it, the easier it gets. We create these networks that we can just zoom right through, like the tunnel from England to France, right? It's like if you travel it over and over again, or when it's snowing and the cars drive through it, it creates this smooth pathway that you can get through a lot faster. But in the beginning, that's not what it's like when we learn something. And so that's why we have to be practicing it and learning from it so that we can create those connections. and that we want new ones. We don't want to just keep working on the ones that are already there.
Exactly. And then, I mean, from a learning perspective, then challenges and effort or challenges, then they're really quite good, because like then the challenges is what is a big part of what makes you learn, right?
Correct. Yeah, because your brain isn't going to grow, right? We know from science experience that the brain actually gets heavier when you're learning a lot of new things, and because it's creating all of these connections, and that's the challenge that does that.
Right. So challenge is important for the brain to be able to develop, kind of.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because if we did the same thing over and over again that you already know how to do, which is what somebody with a fixed mindset really wants to do, is to do the things they know they won't fail at, then you're not going to grow your brain. There's no new connections to grow because you're not doing something new.
Right. Okay. And so how would you say, just to make it clear, like struggle, for example, if you're struggling with an assignment, or perhaps you're struggling with something in your adult life, how does the view of struggle compare between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset?
All right. So if you have a growth mindset and you're struggling, it's easier to reframe that struggle into something that's helpful for you. So it's really hard to do well at something when you're sitting here thinking about, I don't think I can do this. It's too hard. Why did this person give me this task at work? Like, I don't know how to do this. It should have gone to somebody else. Like, I wasn't the right person. And if that's what's occupying your mind, it's really hard to work through a struggle. When you're working through a struggle, you need all your working memory free. You need to be able to like use all your executive functioning, where you're thinking about the problem and you're looking at it from all these different ways. And so anxiety about like, why did they give it to me? And what is this going to mean? And what if I fail? And what will people think of me? And will I get fired? Like, there's all sorts of these thoughts that can go through your mind. But if you think about the struggle as, oh, I can do things. I learn things. I do it all the time in all sorts of different domains. There's a reason I was given this task and I'm up for it. So let me figure it out. And if I don't get it right the first time, that's fine. That's the process, right? Like, what I need to show that I'm working hard on it, that I am trying different things, different ways of doing it, that I know who my resources are to get help when I need help. And it's okay to ask for help. That doesn't mean I'm dumb and can't do something. It means I'm acting in a smart way because I'm using the resources around me and I'm trying different things.
Exactly. I mean, you're doing everything you can to do the task, and also to learn. Also, I mean, you're putting in effort. You're trying different ways of doing the assignment, and you're also trying to get help if you're stuck. I mean, all those ways. Those are both good for design, but they're also good for your own development, your own learning curve.
Right. Exactly. But it's hard.
Yeah.
Particularly like trying different strategies, asking for help. If your fixed mindset is trying to poke its head in when you're struggling and you're thinking, oh, I should go ask my coworker if, who's been here longer than me, if they know how to help me with this, or what next step I should do. Your fixed mindset might be sitting there going, don't do that.
Yeah.
That coworker is gonna think I'm dumb. Like, maybe it's a simple answer, and he'd just look at me with this, pitying face and go tell other people how dumb I am, and no one's ever gonna trust me again, right? That kind of mindset can really eat away at you, and so it's hard. One of the things that happens with growth mindset, it's so popular and people are talking about it everywhere. It often gets distilled down to believe you can change and work hard.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
It's a part of a process that you have to work through continually, depending on the situations you're in. And it does lead to things like, well, if I have this growth mindset that I'm here to learn and that everyone struggles at different points in their careers. So it's fine to ask for help.
Exactly. What you just mentioned there, that I can't recall exactly what it was you said, but that it's about the process and working hard. Was that what you said? No.
Yeah, that what I said is that sometimes growth mindsets in the media
Yeah,
everywhere,
yeah,
and
yeah,
when that happens is it's like a big game of telephone, right? And so the message can change and alter a bit. One of the things that's happened is that it's gotten distilled down. So often it just people say growth mindset means you can change and you just have to work hard.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
like the whole message. And so if every time you struggled, somebody was like, that's okay. You tried hard.
yeah,
That actually sounds a little bit condescending. Like didn't expect you to do any better. It's all right that you tried your best,
yeah,
right? It's not, it sounds like a good message. It's just a really incomplete message.
yeah,
And it's not saying, well, look how much you've done with the effort you've put in already. I think that means you can do more. So you should go do more,
yeah,
right? That sounds very different. And thinking about it as it's not that you sit in a room by yourself and you just do the thing over and over again until it's perfect,
yeah,
right? It's the idea that you're going to learn from this. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from them. And you're going to think about what other strategies there are to be able to help you get through it. And
right.
sometimes we try one strategy, like I can just do this by looking stuff up online, and it doesn't work. We have to be aware of when it's not being effective and
Mm.
think about new strategies.
Okay, exactly. So it's like, so effort is one way to learning and growth, but there's a lot of others as well. I mean, there's also, I mean, using different strategies, asking for help even though it's hard, and other stuff as well. So it's more of a a complete package then, instead of just like this one thing.
Right. And complete package is crucial in there, right? So it's not, oh, I can just ask for help instead of working hard,
Yeah,
right? That's not going to help you learn if somebody else just tells you the answer. It is working on it, trying different strategies, one of which might be to ask for help
yeah.
on a specific part of it, right? Like you're not going to learn if people just tell you how to do it or do it for you. But that doesn't mean don't ever ask for help. It's understanding when to ask for help
Yeah.
so that it's going to help your learning process.
Yeah. So would you say that, so it's kind of focusing on the learning in a way. So it's kind of focusing on the learning, and
Absolutely.
then use these different tools that we have to be able to learn.
Yes, absolutely. Um, that that is at the core of it, is that we we all want to grow and be capable and get better at things, and we do that through effort and learning and understanding that failure is not something fixed about ourselves,
Right.
but just another opportunity to grow. And we should all be celebrating people when they fail and are learning from
R-
those mistakes.
Right. Maybe we can talk about failure also, because I think that this was also one of the things that I find quite interesting, and I think also helpful for a lot of people, because failing is quite tough. I think for a
Hmm.
lot of people, for me as well. I mean, with your fail, it's quite easy to get into a state of, I mean, not feeling that you're done well and stuff like that. So, like, could you talk a little bit more about that, failing from like a fixed mindset perspective and a growth mindset perspective?
Sure. And I'll also clarify that failing, there's private failing and public failing,
Yeah.
right? So somebody knowing you fail also feels different. And how you personally feel about failure is sometimes impacted by that. So if I'm in a workplace or in a classroom in which my boss or my teacher has a fixed mindset, failure is going to feel very different because it's hard when the people around you don't have the same beliefs. Um, so there's being able to get to a point in which you can have this mindset regardless of the context you're in.
Right.
With right, so but with failure, the the idea is to be able to really truly believe, like part of this is that these things aren't just words, there's something you have to internalize as a way of life, that you truly believe this in your core, right? And that's how it's going to become an automatic process.
Yeah.
And it's very hard.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can just, I mean, just like anything else, I can't tell you how to believe about anything and you just do it, right? It's like you have to work through why you want to have this belief and why you believe in it, and work on practicing to make it automatic to start with. So once you've done that and you have that growth mindset really as a part of who you are, failure really becomes there's like almost like a different definition of the word of failure. It's not, it's, I like mistakes, right? Like fail is an end point.
Yeah.
But making a mistake is part of a process.
Yeah.
And that's what we should talk about. We rarely like just flat out fail where there's nothing we can ever do to fix that, right? Like we feel like that sometimes, but it's usually not true. Once we've gotten over being upset about it, it's like, oh, okay, well, I can do this to fix it.
Yeah.
So if we can fix it, it's a mistake, right? So we all make mistakes. No one would go around saying, no one makes mistakes. Like there's somebody, right? Or that only the people who are really successful and like they got there by never making a mistake. And I feel like no one would really would think people would think that was a crazy thing, right?
Yeah,
but if I said they never failed, I don't think that's true, because we have all sorts of examples of great famous people talking about how like different things they did to fail, like how many tries they had to get. What is it, like Heinz ketchup 57? It's because it was the 57th version.
Yeah.
But our belief system is that, oh, people who are great, they didn't fail. They were just always good at this. And it's easy to buy that line sometimes. It's harder, I think, to buy the line that they never made a mistake.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing when we fail in the way we use it. It's that we made a mistake somewhere. Maybe we did a very simple thing. Maybe it's a math problem and the wrong term was used somewhere in the problem. That's a mistake. It's not that you failed math or failed the test, or right. It's like you made a mistake or you made a series of mistakes. And what matters is that you learn from them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah, I think I got sidetracked.
Yeah, no, but for sure. But I think that part also seems to be important. The thing about learning from your mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah, could you talk to that?
Sure. The idea is that is our golden opportunity to do our learning. So again, when we're doing things that we know how to do, we don't grow our brain, and we're not growing these new connections that are going to make doing things we do in the future easier. So and everything's going along fine, we're not actually doing much growing. When we make a mistake, that makes us have to stop and learn something new. Yeah. Why did that mistake happen? What do I need to do next time for that mistake not to happen? Right? And we get into this problem solving mode. And now we're doing something new. Now we're learning.
Yeah.
And so it's really, you can't learn without making mistakes. And that's what I mean by it being part of the process of learning. And so understanding that about mistakes can help really keep people motivated and going through tough times.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, it's something really happens when you make a mistake. I mean, it's quite obvious, I think, in your consciousness, like as a lot of stuff going on when you make a mistake. I mean, you get aware of stuff. You also, or for me at least, you get a bit of anxiety. At least I know that I do, and and that also puts your brain like in an on mode, and you, as you said, you look for the things, and I mean that really turns your brain on, and that really seems to be an opportunity to be able to learn, I think.
Right. But in the beginning, when you're first really trying to adopt this growth mindset, you have to work at it. It's
Yeah.
not just something like you've heard this podcast. Now, boom.
Yeah.
Every time there's a
Yeah.
mistake, you're not going to worry about it, and it's not
Exactly.
going to feel bad. That's not what's going to happen. And even as I was saying, like I've been studying growth mindset for a long time. You come to this podcast, and my brain's doing all these things. I was texting my friends last night, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
for sure.
you always have to work on it. So the
Yeah.
idea is that you have to, I personally, I create like trigger words in my head.
Yeah.
So I start thinking about what are the words, what is my brain telling me when I make a mistake?
Yeah.
And, you know, one that comes up a lot is like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so you carry around what your substitute is. So if I hear myself saying I can't do this, one of the tools is to say I can't do this yet.
Yeah.
If I ever say the word can't, I have to put yet at the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's my task. My task for the next 3 months is all I'm going to do is really try to pay attention to when my brain says can't. And I'm going to put yet at the end of the sentence. I'm going to say the sentence over and over again with yet at the end of it. And I'm going to see if that works for me. Does that help me feel better and be able to keep focusing on what I'm doing? Because the same thing doesn't work for everyone. But the idea is to really think about, okay, where is it that my fixed mindset comes out?
Yeah.
What kinds of things? Is it when I make mistakes? Maybe it's only when I make mistakes at work when my boss is going to see my product.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? Then it's like, okay, in those situations, where do I get stuck? Where do I find these words coming into my head and eating up my working memory and making it harder for me to focus? I'm going to pick some words there, and I'm going to rewrite that, and I'm going to practice that over and over again. Every time I hear this word in my head, I'm going to change it. So, for example, when I was in graduate school, I used to say, I should have done blah, blah, blah. And I realized, whoa, I feel terrible every time I say that sentence in my head. I should have done this. It just makes me feel, I messed up. I made a mistake. And now I'm just going to dwell on this when there's nothing I could do. And I started telling myself every time I start a sentence with I should have, I'm going to stop my sentence and I'm going to say, next time I will.
Right.
And I'm just going to do that. And I worked on it over and over again. And at first in my head, I'd be like, I should have done blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I'm supposed to not finish the sentence. I should have. Right then I should stop. But I'm not. I went on. But over time, so even if I said the whole sentence in my head, then I would go back and still do it. Okay, next time I will do. And I repeat that several times. And over time, I got better at, I should have, nope, not ending that sentence. Next time I will. And now I don't really say I should have anymore. But it was a process I had to go through to figure out what my trigger words were, how they made me feel, and what other sentence would make me feel better and focused on moving ahead.
Right. Interesting. I think there's a lot of different things there that came up for me when you just said.
Sorry,
yeah. But it's great. Like one of the things I think was interesting is that the awareness of when your fixed mindset comes into action. So when you believe that you can't do something, or that you're will not be able to do a certain task or learn something. Like, how do you have any tips on like getting to know your fixed mindset, like getting to know when it comes into your awareness?
That's an interesting question. How did I do that? I think partly our emotions tell us a bit.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes when I do stuff, I just realize, like, I'll be doing something and realize I'm feeling really anxious.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling anxious doing this? Or I just often, it's really, really obvious because it's just like, I give up. Right. Like, there's always times in everyone's life where they're like, I give up. I don't do this. I mean, as I said, I've been doing my job a long time. There's all sorts of parts of it where I find myself being like, no, I can't. I don't want to be on that committee. I can't do blah, blah, blah that they have to do. Like, that's not something that I'm good at. It's not my strength. Right.
Yeah.
And so that usually it's associated with anxiety in me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but I think often it would be anxiety and a feeling of giving up, not wanting to work on it, or not even wanting to start it. Things like that
Yeah.
can often be the fixed mindset.
Right.
So Carol Dweck talks about, she gave, I can't repeat it as eloquently as she did, but he told a story. There's a researcher in Australia, I think, who was working on this, where trying to train people to really envision their fixed mindset in their brain and their growth mindset in their brain. So give it a persona, name it. So
Yeah.
my fixed
Right.
mindset, right? So my fixed mindset is Sally, and my growth mindset is Emily,
Right.
right? And so when I start to feel stuck, like I can't do this, I don't want to do this, like I got this assignment and I don't need, I'm going to try to get someone else to do it. It's like, okay, wait, let me take a step back. So make sure I remember the names I give. Sarah, my fixed mindset. Like, look, Sarah, I understand what you're trying to do. You want to protect me. And I'm really grateful for that. Like, it's nice to have you stand looking out for me and making sure I'm okay. But I actually do want to do this. I want to learn, and I know I might not do well, right? Because now Sarah's like, but you're going to fail, and you can't fail.
Yeah.
That's going to be bad.
Yeah.
No, it's okay, because I want to learn from it, and I know that failing is going to be part of that, or making mistakes is going to be part of that, and I know like struggling is going to be hard. So it's all right, Sarah. Just for this, let me just go ahead and move forward with it, right? And so it's like she had. I said it's not as eloquently as she was able to do that, but the idea is that they're not your fixed mindset, your growth mindset. It's not this like devil and angel on your shoulder, right? There's roles that they were developed to play, and that's okay. But the
Yeah.
idea is that kind of work through it with your growth mindset, understanding like what is it that you're risking, right?
Yeah.
It's a risk. You're going out there risking making mistakes that other people might see, and how will they think of you, and things like that. Where, as opposed to, oh, if I learn, I'm sure that most people in their life can come up with several examples of people who are just so graceful through mistakes, right? They make a mistake and they don't seem to get anxious about it and embarrassed and want to hide. They really own up to that mistake, and
Yeah.
they say, yeah, and it's much easier actually to own up to mistake when you really tried hard, right? So if I make a mistake and I'm like, wow, I spent several hours doing this and I had made all these other mistakes. I thought I had it now, but I must have, when I was doing X, Y, and Z to get to this point, I took basically a wrong turn somewhere. So I'll
Yeah.
have to go back to my process and figure out where that was, but I'll do it. No problems. I'm good. If you have some suggestions, I'm happy to hear suggestions. But if somebody's already worked really hard at something and considered several different strategies and pathways to get it, it's really easy to just be like, okay, go keep doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
right? You're telling people basically they can trust you because you're gonna do it. You're gonna make it work, and it changes how other people are gonna treat you when you make mistakes. Also,
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, there's also somewhere again about the like if you've done like if you really put in a lot of effort and you put in a lot of different stuff, if you can also like take the growth mindset aspect of like I want to learn kind of, then you really excelled, even though you made some or a lot of mistakes. If you're, I mean, then you still made a lot of progress then.
definitely right. And so it's learning to appreciate that, learning to have that dialogue in your head that this is good. This is what I wanted. I
Yeah.
wanted to make mistakes. And because that's how I'm going to learn. I can't learn and grow if I don't do hard, challenging things.
Yeah.
And when you do hard, challenging things, everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah, for sure.
If they don't, it wasn't challenging enough, and they're not going to grow as much.
Exactly. And then, I mean, if you look at it in the long term, if you keep on doing harder stuff and you're challenging yourself and you're doing different tasks that you haven't done before, I mean, if you look at that in a lifetime, then you're really going to develop a lot of skills and learn a lot of stuff and have a lot of fun, and it's going to
Right.
I mean, you got to, it seems like you have to put yourself out there a bit also to be able to develop and learn and all this stuff.
Yeah, I have my friend's daughter, when she was in second grade, had a teacher who really embodied growth mindset and really did a great job of instilling it in her students. And my friend's daughter was working on a problem at home, and her brother came up to do it for her, and she got mad. She's like, "No, don't do it for me. You're taking away my opportunity to grow my brain,
Yeah.
to grow new neurons."
Yeah.
Right? And it's like it changes how you think about it and
Yeah.
what the dialogue is
Yeah.
around challenge and mistakes.
For sure. Then that again, I mean, that seems to be, I mean, talking about it in an intellectual level, in a theoretical level, I mean, that is a bit easier, I guess, than, internalizing and actually feeling or getting the genuine response and, genuinely feeling all this stuff.
Right. Because you have to have a growth mindset about it, right? You have to say, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to practice this. I'm going to grow those neurons that are going to allow me to be able to have thought processes focused on growth and learning.
Yeah.
But those aren't going to magically happen because you've listened to this podcast or you've read the book Mindset, right? It's something that can only happen by being out in the world and trying it and practicing it, and still having those times where you shy away from something, but you work actively to change your initial thoughts into something that's going to allow you to put yourself out there, and then practice the responses of what you do when you do struggle, when you do make a mistake.
Right. Like, do you have any tips for somebody who would like to internalize the growth mindset? Do you have any tips of a good strategy or a good way to internalize it?
So we're still developing this and to figure out really how to help people in different contexts, and I think it depends on different factors of what you're struggling with, what domain it is. And so I think that one is kind of learning your triggers. What is it? Like, what are the situations that trigger a fixed mindset for you?
Yeah.
And working through why that's happening, and thinking about these strategies you can do to change your mindset in that situation. So it might be easiest to kind of start to pick a place to start. Like, maybe it is at work when I am assigned these kinds of tasks.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to focus on what my internal dialogue is in those situations and work really hard to change that internal dialogue.
Yeah.
And to pay attention to how I feel over time, right? So the first time I try my new internal dialogue, it might be really hard, and maybe I don't truly believe it. I know I'm supposed to say these words in my head, but maybe I'm not really believing it yet. But I'm going to try this. And this is how I'm going to make sure I put in the effort and practice that I need. Here are the resources I'm going to use to help me along the way. And then how do you feel, right? So it's monitoring kind of, okay, I tried this. How do I feel now?
Yeah.
And how do I feel the next time I try it? And at some point, hopefully what would happen is the dialogue would become more automatic, and you would notice that, oh, I'm not as stressed when I'm given something difficult, and I'm actually asking for more difficult things. Where else can I apply this? Where else am I really still stuck in a fixed mindset? What other kinds of situations trigger it?
Right. So it's kind of being aware of when you feel like you can't do something, or when you get anxiety about doing something, or when you're getting thoughts about that you can't do something, and then being aware of those situations if you have something that's recurring or that comes back a lot of times, and then kind of working on that in the moment, then like working on what you're say to yourself and being aware of what you're say to yourself, kind of.
Right. And sometimes it's hard to do in the moment. And so it might be something that, in the evenings, you sit down and review your day.
Yeah.
So where did I get stuck today? And what am I going to do the next time I'm in that situation? And you kind of make some lists even, right? So that you
Yeah.
know, and so you could refer to it later. Because sometimes right where we're in this situation, it can be really hard, which is why it takes practice and to be able to get better at it, right? It's not, again, just something that tomorrow morning you have a growth mindset now.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's a really a meta perspective, like a growth mindset to develop a growth mindset.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, but interesting. Okay, so it's kind of trying to do it perhaps in the moment if you can, and then it's reviewing it at night or in the morning, and perhaps writing about the like what happened, and perhaps writing about how you would like to do something in the future.
Yeah. And, and you can think about like, how did it make me feel? And how would it make me feel if I had said X? Because the same thing won't necessarily work for everybody, right? So
Yeah.
it's figuring out what are the words that work for you that are going to allow you to engage in challenge, seek out challenge, be able to persist through it, even when it's really hard and you're struggling. That's going to give you the security to be able to ask people without feeling like I'm saying I'm dumb and can't do it.
Right.
Right. So it's wanting to have those goals, right? It's wanting to have that motivation and persistence when things are hard. And this process of developing the growth mindset and then having the growth mindset is going to get you to those goals.
Right. I was also wondering if somebody would like to, perhaps first really understand what the growth mindset is. Would you suggest reading Carol Dweck's book Mindset, or is there some other resource which you find useful for actually learning about what growth mindset is?
Yeah, I think Carol's book is a great starting place. I think that it's a nice, easy read with lots of real life examples in it, and I think people find it very useful to read that and learn a lot from it. So I think that's great. There are a lot of resources online. There's TED Talks, there's YouTube videos, and they vary in quality, but that's another way. And I know Carol has several talks online that you can listen to, but I think the book is a really nice introduction. But I think her main YouTube video is also a nice introduction to it, along with several other ones.
Right. I also found the I can't remember exactly what it's called, like scholars of mindsets or growth mindset scholars. Like I can't remember exactly what it was, but the web page there, I think that was also useful. I think for learning about the mindset, it was kind of a summary of the growth mindset and also these other two mindsets that I haven't seen before about purpose and what was again belonging. Yeah. So I think that was. Can you remember what that was called, or should I look that up?
Yeah. No, it's the Mindset Scholars Network. The address is mindsetscholarsnetwork.org.
Right.
And yes, they have a lot of great materials, and that you can learn for yourself. There's stuff about like schools and the climate at schools, and as you said, belonging and purpose. And so there's great resources there. There's also, if you're a teacher, there's PERTS, PERTS.net, has a lot of resources for teachers. And Mindset Works is another resource for like parents and schools.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, and then there's a lot of different. We have a lot of different resources then for those, because I guess like learning about what growth mindset is, and then I guess start to doing these kind of exercises afterwards would probably be useful, I guess.
Yes, definitely, and there are lots of, as I said, like tips online um, and just other websites that that will teach you about it. I think but it's important, just like with anything, to be an informed consumer of information, right? And so I often look for things that are said on multiple websites to say, okay, here's the consistent message that's being told.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing that would be interesting to talk a little bit about is how growth mindset can be instilled in others. From my understanding, praise can be an important part.
Yes. Well, so I will start by saying that we are still struggling to understand to how to teach somebody to instill a growth mindset in someone else. So like a parent or a teacher. It doesn't seem to be a very clear pathway to doing that. So there has been some research on praise suggesting that praising for the process is helpful, right? So it's not, if somebody does a good job, it's not saying you're so smart, you're so clever. It's saying, wow, even look at all the hard work you did there. And then you got this outcome that you wanted. Wow, that hard work really paid off, right? It's really emphasizing that it's not that people just do it. Like things are just good, right?
Yeah.
And because they have some innate ability for it. It's that they worked hard, and helping people remember the way they got there was through that hard work.
Right.
And if they didn't work hard, then it's like, oh, wow, that must not have been that challenging. I'm sorry you weren't given this opportunity to grow. Let's see what we can do that would be more challenging, because that's a much more worthwhile use of your time when you really have to work for it, and because then you're growing and learning.
Yeah. So you said that there's been a lot of or that there's some different studies, I guess, and with some different opinions about how you can instill a growth mindset. So like what is like seems to be the best ways to instill a growth mindset?
So in another person we're talking about, right? Like as a parent or a teacher.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that there's a number of studies with different ideas. I would say we haven't found there aren't a lot of studies, so there aren't a lot of ideas. So often some of the most successful growth mindset interventions are delivered directly to students without going through the teacher. But we do know the teacher plays an important role. So in these interventions, the mindset of the teacher impacts whether this intervention is going to be successful or not. So the behaviors and attitudes they're bringing into the classroom do have an impact. The question is how do we help teachers and parents have this internalized growth mindset, like I was talking about, where it's like this is really the way that they think and believe at the core of what they're doing. It's effortless to do the behaviors in a consistent way. So sometimes, right, we're told something, we're like, sure, I kind of believe that. It could be about any kind of attitude, right, about the way the world works. Right, like, oh yeah, recycling, that is something I understand. We need to do that to help our environment. But I don't know. I mean, I don't really know the process by how it works, maybe. And so then if I'm just kind of like taking other people's word for it, it's not that I've really like figured out like the role that recycling plays and how much of a difference it can make if I recycle. If I'm just saying, oh, recycling because people are telling me to, I'm probably not going to be very consistent at it, right? Like, oh, I didn't think to check that, whether it was recyclable, or no, all these things aren't, or it's not really that convenient right now. It's fine because I recycle the rest of the time, right? Because it's not this internalized belief that I have of the way things work in the world. And when it is, then I am super consistent with it, right? It's like, no, I know that every bottle counts and that I will carry this for 5 miles because there's nowhere to recycle it here, right? That's very different. That person is going to be very consistent in their behavior because they have really internalized this is a part of who they are. This is just their belief system. It's not something they're actively having to like remind themselves of over and over again. So that's where we're trying to understand, how do we help people get to that place,
Yeah.
instead of just saying, we do this because I know I'm supposed to do it. I'm supposed to believe this way, so I say I believe this way, and then do inconsistent behaviors.
Exactly. Yeah, I think Carol Dweck said, mentioned, the you gotta walk the talk. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that seems it really seems seems logical as well. I mean, if it's really inside of you, like in your core, then if you can truly believe that everybody can grow and everybody can learn and everybody, I mean, that really has to have an effect on the people that you have around you as a teacher or in another profession as well.
Right. And it goes back to, that's not something that just happens because you listened to this podcast and thought, yes, I want to have a growth mindset, so that's what I'm going to have. It's, again, that process
Yeah.
of how do you really make it, and
Yeah.
it's part of an automatic thought that you have, an automatic way of thinking and believing and behaving.
Exactly. You also mentioned before that there is, from my understanding, that there are some software that's some intervention that is made for students, for example. Is that something that is free for people, for other teachers as well, that they can get a hand of, or is it, yeah?
So there's different versions. The PERTS website, perts.net, they have some free resources that are available, and they was part of a team that did a large national study for high schoolers in the US, and they found good results from the program that they created.
Yeah.
So that's the PERTS program. There are things like Class Dojo for younger kids. They have really nice cartoons. I haven't ever seen a randomized control of it, so I don't know the impact of it. I did a very small one in South Africa that had some promising results. With also, we ended up using it for high schoolers, but it's really meant for younger kids. And so there are things like that are out there. But we're still working on, there still needs to be a lot more work of figuring out what other programs for different age groups would work. We mostly have the evidence, say, in college and high school. We have some using Brainology, which was the other program I talked about.
Yeah.
That one isn't free for schools, but it's for middle schoolers, and we are finding positive impacts of that program for middle school students in a randomized trial. So the work is still coming out of really, what do these effective interventions look like?
Yeah. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that study, because that was a pretty big study, right? In the US.
The national study?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That one is, it was run by David Yeager and a whole lot of great colleagues there doing wonderful work. And it is a program that was delivered to ninth graders, so as they're transitioning to high school in the US. And it's a 2-session, it's like 2 half-hour sessions in which they are on a computer learning about growth mindset. And so they read stories about people who have gone through the program in the past, about famous people who talking about having a growth mindset, and they think about how they apply it and the science behind it, of how can we know that the brain actually does grow. We have scientific evidence behind that. And then they reflect on their own lives and how they can apply it in their lives and use it. And so that was administered to 1,100 high schools. I might not have the number quite right.
Yeah.
And in a randomized trial, and they found an increase in grades for students who were low performing in their school. So one of the things that we find is that these interventions are more impactful when people are going through struggle. So
Right.
if everything's great, like if I always get A's, then my fixed mindset doesn't really come out
Yeah.
because I haven't failed and I haven't struggled. So it's really important, and this is why often it's done at transitions to like middle school, high school, college, is because these are times that a lot of students are struggling.
Yeah.
And it's the students who are struggling who are benefiting the most out of it. We have a similar, like very large national study in Indonesia, and we found the same type of thing, that students who are low performing are the ones who are really benefiting from the program. And in a smaller US study with the brainology one I was telling you about for middle school, it's the same thing. It's the students who are low achieving to begin with that are benefiting the most.
Interesting. So it seems to be, it seems to really have an effect on people that are having challenges. Would you say, do you believe that that is also true for adults? I mean, if there's that the adults that have more trouble and more challenges, that that it could be better for them?
Yeah, I think that it's right. If everything is going super well in your life, so we had talked about, well, where might you start? And we had talked about that you start with things that that you struggle with,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That where your fixed mindset comes out. If you can't figure out any place that you ever feel that, then it's not likely to do as much for you. Although understanding it might be able to help you working with other people who are struggling.
right.
Um, I find it hard. It's like, yeah, I feel like, I have a lot of things that go well. I would have a hard time saying that there's nothing I ever struggle with
Yeah,
and that I'm ever challenged with. So, but yes, if there isn't, or if you're just at a place in your life and your work and that you're just currently not experiencing it,
right,
then maybe it wouldn't be as helpful.
right. Carl, it's been really interesting talking to you. It would be also interesting to know, the stuff that perhaps that you do, or if you have a website or something else, that if somebody would like to find the things that you do or something else that you would like to mention. Do you have anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. I work at UC Davis, at University of California, Davis, and for University of California Cooperative Extension, which means that my job is to extend knowledge from campus to communities, and that's my teaching role instead of teaching students on campus.
Right.
So, for example, this podcast is part of extending knowledge from campus to community. So it's considered extension teaching for me.
Right.
So my work tends to be mostly focused on doing research in which we can create curriculum or evaluate curriculum, or figure out ways to disseminate knowledge. But I also do basic research. For example, I have a student who's looking at, what is it that teachers, what are the behaviors that teachers do or that parents do to instill a growth mindset? So we are trying to answer that question still. My website is selflab.org. So SELFLAB. And so you can find out more information about different research that I have going on there, including also self-esteem, since that's another one of my research lines.
Perfect. Great. So it's somebody's interested, it's just to head over there. I was also wondering, we mentioned a couple of different resources here. We mentioned the Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, and we also mentioned some other. Is there any other good resource that you would like to mention when it comes to the growth mindset? It could be, YouTube account or a website or or some other book perhaps, or whatever.
I think the ones that we've mentioned are good. I think those are good because they are going to link to other places that will have more. I think it's hard to, I think that's the best because it's coming out of the research. And so when they're linking to other works, then they're also linking it to being like high quality resources.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Kali, I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's a fascinating subject, I think, the growth mindset, and I'm sure that a lot of people who would listen to this have learned a lot about it, and probably find it very interesting as well. So yeah, big thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge about this.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It was nice talking to you.
Hope you enjoyed the episode. Friends, I really need your help. I'm trying to get the podcast out there. So I was wondering if you could help me by leaving a positive rating and a review on your Apple device or the podcast player that you're using, as well as subscribing to the podcast. That really helps getting the show more visible on iTunes and other players. And if you don't know how it's done, then YouTube has a lot of great videos, so you can search there. All right, that's it. Take care.